My wife, 32, and I, 30, have been married for 5 years and share a 3-year-old son. Our marriage has always had its ups and downs, but nothing could have prepared me for the bombshell she dropped 2 weeks ago. My wife told me, completely out of the blue, that she was volunteering to be a surrogate for her older sister, who has struggled for years to conceive. She asked for my opinion, and I was unequivocally against it. Surrogacy is no small commitment. It comes with physical, emotional, and financial challenges. But despite my feelings, she made it clear that she was going through with it no matter what. She told me I had 2 choices: stand with her or stand against her. Her stance devastated me. We are a family. We have a young child to raise, and we both work full-time to support our household. I couldn't understand how she thought this decision would work, let alone why she felt justified making it unilaterally. Things got worse when she informed me she planned to quit her job once the surrogacy process began. This meant she expected me to handle all the financial responsibilities, support her through the pregnancy, and still be fully present for our son. I tried reasoning with her countless times. I begged her to consider how this would impact not just me, but also our child and our shared life. Yet, she remained adamant, shutting down every attempt at a conversation and continuing to plan the surrogacy with her sister and brother-in-law. To make matters even more complicated, my sister-in-law and her husband are not financially stable. My wife expects us to cover all the medical and related expenses associated with the surrogacy. To me, this felt not just unreasonable but outright unfair. If they cannot afford the cost of surrogacy, how do they plan to raise a child? My personal belief has always been that if you're not in a position to take care of yourself, you shouldn't bring another life into the equation. After 2 weeks of trying to navigate this nightmare, I hit my breaking point. I told my wife I wanted a divorce. Her reaction was explosive. She called me selfish, heartless, and a traitor to her and her family. I've since moved out and am staying at a friend's house, trying to process everything that's happened and figure out my next steps. My priority now is my son. I want to be there for him no matter what happens between my wife and me. I should mention that my wife's decision to quit her job without warning me was another major blow to our relationship. She made this life-altering decision without so much as a discussion. Her insistence on carrying this pregnancy for 9 months, despite my objections, feels like a betrayal. I've seen some advice warning me to ensure I don't end up paying child support for the baby she'll carry for her sister. The thought of that possibility hadn't even crossed my mind, but I'll take steps to protect myself legally. To be honest, I'm still in shock. My wife and I haven't had any meaningful conversations since I left. She seems determined to proceed with her plans regardless of the consequences for our marriage or family. After I left our home and moved in with a friend, I tried multiple times to have a conversation with my wife about everything that had happened. Each time, she shut me down, brushing off my concerns and going about her day as if nothing was wrong. Divorce was no longer just a possibility. It was a reality. One thing that baffled me was her insistence on quitting her job for the surrogacy. She never explained why this was necessary, and it only fueled my frustration. Supporting her and our child financially was already a challenge, and now she expected me to shoulder the cost of the surrogacy as well. It felt like she was blind to the strain she was putting on me, on us. I couldn't shake the nagging thought. Was she already pregnant? Was the surrogacy decision just a cover for something else? If so, I wasn't going to stick around to find out. My son remained my top priority, and I needed to focus on what was best for him. 3 days after I left, I decided to return to the house. Some of you had advised me to take control of the situation, and I realized I needed to. When I arrived, my wife was there. She seemed relieved to see me, saying she was glad I'd come to my senses. She went on about how I needed to stop being difficult and just accept her decision to be a surrogate. I wasn't in the mood for another circular argument, so I quietly walked past her and slept in my son's room. But the doubts wouldn't leave my mind. Messages and comments from others had planted a troubling idea. Could my wife already be pregnant? Had she cheated? Was this surrogacy plan a ruse? The next day, I tried once again to have a calm conversation with her. But as before, she was dismissive, refusing to acknowledge my concerns. Finally, I told her outright. The divorce was real, our marriage was over, and I hadn't been happy for weeks. Her reaction was explosive. She burst into tears, accused me of being heartless, and asked how I could possibly do this to her. When the argument escalated, I asked her to take a pregnancy test in front of me, right then and there. Her response? Immediate and angry refusal. She screamed at me, called me crazy, and said there was no way she'd take a pregnancy test. After yelling for what felt like an eternity, she stormed out of the house. For 2 whole days, she didn't call or come back. What hurt the most was that she left without a second thought for our son. This abandonment made my decision easier. I called her sister and brother-in-law to try to get some clarity, but both had blocked my number. It seemed like they were all in this together, shutting me out entirely. While this chaos unfolded, my lawyer was working tirelessly behind the scenes. Today, my wife finally returned to the house to pack some clothes, announcing she would stay with her sister for a while. That's when I served her the divorce papers. Her face said it all. Shock, disbelief, and anger when my wife read the divorce papers. Everything finally clicked for her. She dropped to her knees, crying and begging, asking why I was doing this to her. Her pleas were desperate, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. In the end, all I could do was move forward. She had become an unrecognizable mess, consumed by her decisions. Meanwhile, I sent our son to stay with my parents until I could figure out our next steps. In the divorce, I'm asking for full custody of my son. I've made this decision because, over the past few weeks, she hasn't cared for him at all. Her sole focus has been on the surrogacy story, leaving me to handle everything else. I also agreed to let her keep the house. That's more than she deserves, but our 59 days have passed since my last update, and a lot has happened. First, many of you were right. I'm currently in the process of divorcing my wife, and here's why. She was already pregnant, but not from the surrogacy. The father? Her boss, who, as it turns out, has a family of his own. She confessed everything in a last-ditch effort to save our marriage. According to her, she'd been having an affair with her boss for several months. When she found out she was pregnant, he wanted nothing to do with her. That's why she quit her job. It wasn't about surrogacy, but about avoiding him and the scandal. She also revealed that he offered her a significant amount of money to terminate the pregnancy and keep everything quiet. She refused, claiming she wanted to keep the child. From there, she concocted the surrogacy story to cover up the truth. I'm still reeling from the betrayal, but I didn't let her deceit go unanswered. I gathered all the evidence, including text messages between her and her ex-boss, and sent them to his wife. Let's just say that the day I revealed the truth to his wife was a glorious day. I still don't understand what her endgame was with the whole surrogacy cover story. Did she think she could keep the truth hidden forever? Either way, it doesn't matter anymore to either focus on what's best for my child. 3 days after her confession, I asked her for a paternity test. Her reaction? Furious. She admitted that she'd slept with multiple men before our son was born, and there's a chance he might not even be mine. That admission crushed me. The thought that my boy, my son, might not be biologically mine hurts more than I can put into words. My lawyer advised me to request a paternity test, not only for my peace of mind, but to clarify my legal standing. I will say this outright. No matter what the test reveals, I will never abandon my boy. I love him unconditionally and have been his father in every way that matters since the day he was born. But the betrayal still stings. When I brought up the paternity test, my ex called me cruel and accused me of being a heartless piece of garbage. Her argument? Why does it matter? You're his real father because you raised him. She doesn't understand. It's not about the boy himself. It's about the trust she shattered. I will always be there for my son. But that doesn't make her betrayal any less painful today. As far as I know, There were no further updates after this. The emotions, betrayals, and heartbreak in this tale speak for themselves. The protagonist's love for his son is clear, as is his determination to do what's best for him despite the emotional devastation caused by his ex-wife's actions.